Hi, Algebra 1. Today we're going to continue moving through Chapter 8, and we will be in Chapter 8, Section 3. And again, we're going to divide this section into two different lessons. Today's lesson is just going to focus on multiplying binomials by binomials. So we have two terms being multiplied by two terms. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate problems 1, 2, and 3 from the book, each a different way. I'm going to give you three different approaches to solving these. First one is going to be distribution. The second one is going to be using a chart. And the third one is going to be using the FOIL method. You are welcome to figure out your preference and use any of the methods that you would like. When it comes to your book assignments, I'll probably say this again at the end, when it tells you, oh, solve these using distribution, solve these using the chart, you don't have to do it any particular way. You're welcome to solve it whichever method you have decided is your most comfortable one. If you want to try it all the different ways before you make that decision, obviously that's a great idea. But please do not think that you have to solve them one way over another. Okay, our first example that we're going to go over is from problem 1 in your book, also in your note handout. I want to multiply this binomial, two terms, by this binomial, two terms. And this method is going to use distribution. And so what I will do is I will take my first binomial and break it up into two chunks. So I know that I want to multiply this 2x by everything in that second quantity. And then I'm going to add to it, that sign tells me that, I'm going to add 4 times that second quantity again. Oh, and I sure hope I left enough room here. I don't know that I did. That's okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do the distribution. This time it looks a lot like, well, by breaking it up like that, it looks like our first lesson in this week of taking one monomial and distributing it through everything inside the quantity. Because we've done that and done it enough, I'm going to go through this next part pretty quickly. If I distribute this 2x, I get 6x squared minus 14x. Then I'm going to add to it 12x minus 28. Especially when we're multiplying, we need to, as our last step, make sure that we've simplified and cleaned everything up that we possibly can. If I look at this problem, I notice I have two common terms here. Common terms have the same variable and power. These both have an x, which means I can do the math of the coefficients and combine those. So instead what I'll actually do is I'll just erase it since I'm running out of room. Negative 14x plus 12x gives me, when I combine those two common terms, negative 2x. So my answer for this first one is 6x squared minus 2x minus 28. Okay, that's the first method. Breaking it apart and using distribution. My first term times the whole second quantity, and my second term times the whole second quantity. Then I do my multiplication and I clean it up. This next method, though, is going to use a chart, and it's going to be very similar to multiplication tables that you have done in the past, and if you remember, we did that a lot this year, our 12s tables, where we multiply horizontally and vertically and get an answer where those two, that row and that column meet. We're going to do the same thing here. So if I look at my first quantity, x minus 3, I'm going to break that up by terms. And that's going to go on the left side. It's going to be 1x and negative 3. Across the top is going to be my second binomial. And I break it up, 4x minus 5. Well, I'm going to go through this multiplication table and say, well, this square is where my x and my 4x meet, and I'm going to put the product there. So that would give me 4x squared. This one down here would take my negative 3 times my 4x and give me negative 12x. I'm going to follow through with the second part. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. My last one, negative 3 times negative 15 gives me a positive 15. I take each of those components though, and I'm going to go ahead and write them out in descending order, which is my standard form that we've talked about so many times on these videos. And I'm going to go ahead and write it out like this. And you'll see that if I have 2 terms multiplying by 2 terms, I'm going to get 4 terms in my answer. However, my last step, just like we did in this first problem, is to clean up anything I can clean up. And I can see I have 2 common terms here. Same variable, same power. I can go ahead and combine those. -5 minus 12 gives me -17x. Descending order, x squared, x, no x's. Okay, that was the second method, using a chart. The third method that I'm going to talk you through is the FOIL method. This is the most common method. And quite frankly, it's the way that I think through these problems. It does not mean it's the only way or the best way for your brain. I do think that if you get comfortable with this method, it's the fastest method. So I would encourage you to try this one a few times for sure. Okay, so the FOIL method. And if you can see here, I've broken it up. It's an acronym, FOIL. Those are the first letters of my process. F stands for first, O stands for outside, I stands for inside, and L stands for last. So whenever you take 2 binomials being multiplied together, we have different term combinations there. And I'm going to try to do this one color-coded so that we can just be very careful for those of you that this is the first time you've heard this. I know a lot of you have heard this before, but some of you haven't. So I'm going to take it really slowly. So if I want to go through remember, the last one we did, if I take 2 terms by 2 terms, I'm always going to get 4 terms before I clean it up. That's what each of those are. So my first term is going to be my firsts. So when I talk about my firsts, that means my firsts inside each quantity. So then I'm going to multiply those together. 5x times 2x gives me 10x squared for my F of my FOIL. My outsides. Well, if I look at my 2 quantities, this one's on the outside and this one's on the outside. So that looks like I'm going to do this one times that one. My 2 outsides, like my bookends. So I multiply 5x times 1. Well, that's a nice easy one. Gives me 5x for my O, or my outsides. The book also uses the word outer. Outside, outer, whatever. I learned outside. In fact, I probably can say this in my sleep. First outside, inside, last. Okay, inside. Those are my reds. My insides. Again, if my outsides were like my bookends, my insides are what's in between those. So I take this by this. Don't forget to take the sign with it. So in this case, I have -3 times 2x. Gives me -6x for this problem. Okay, my L takes me to my lasts. You'll notice they're the only 2 that haven't been multiplied together yet, but they're the last of this one and the last of that one would be in the green. -3 times 1 gives me -3. Okay, at this point, I need to look at the 4 terms that I have and see if there are any common terms that can be cleaned up. And if I do that, I see right here, my x's are common terms. They need to be combined. So my final answer is 10x squared minus x minus 3 for my answer for my FOIL method problem. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clear one of my boards and put the 2 practice problems up while you pause the video, because they're in your note handout. They're also taken from different places in your book. So if you don't have the note handout in front of you, hang tight and I will get them written on this board. We're going to do 2 as our practice problem, and you are welcome to use any method that you'd like. I'm going to talk through the answer using the FOIL method. your answer should be the same as mine no matter what method you used. But if you're getting them wrong, you might want to try a different method, and maybe that's where the problem is. Okay, so the first one is and again, use whatever method you'd like. There's practice problem 1. And practice problem number 2. If you have not paused the video yet to do these, go do that now so that we can check your work together. Okay, I'm going to talk through these like using the FOIL method. First, outside, inside, last. So if I look at this, my first terms in each of those quantities. If I multiply those together, I get 4p cubed. I always have to remember my power rules. That's why chapter 7 was so important. My outsides give me negative 10p squared. My insides, 6p, and my lasts give me negative 15. First, outside, inside, last. 2 times 2 is going to give me 4 terms. My last step is always to check to see if I have any common terms that can be combined or cleaned up. And if I look at this, I actually don't. In descending order, I have p cubed, p squared, p to the first, and no p's. So that's my final answer for practice problem number 1. The second one, I have 3x plus 1 times x plus 4. Again, you can be using any method that you'd like. You should be getting the same answer. I prefer the FOIL method, and I do think it's the fastest. So that's how I'm going to give my answers. First gives me 3x squared. Outsides gives me 12x. Insides gives me 1x. Lasts gives me 4. Remember, we're multiplying these terms. Now when I clean up and see any common terms, that's where I get to add or subtract. And I see I have x's. 12 plus 1 gives me 13x. So my final answer for the second problem is 3x squared plus 13x plus 4. Okay, so you have some suggested book problems in the note handout and also on RunWeb. The answers are all provided for you in the back of your book. You have one set of assignments, one assignment on Khan Academy to practice multiplying binomials. Again, use any method that you want, and you're probably still going to need scrap paper. But I wanted to take the time here to mention one more thing. And last week in the videos, there was embedded an extra credit possibility that about half of you caught and earned points on. That's very revealing to me as the teacher about who's really watching the videos. But today I wanted to talk about the problem of the week. You know, when we were in school, we would do the problem of the day. However, I put it in under Wednesday in RunWeb, and I've only had a couple of you attempt them. That's fine. It's extra. It's fun, whatever. There's a chance there for extra credit. So far, I've only had one person attempt and get the right answer. Congratulations, Andy Beck. But today's problem of the week is required. Everybody needs to try it out. It's listed under Wednesday's assignments in RunWeb, but you can look at it and attempt it at any point during this week. And it is using X forms. There's a pattern that I need you to find and fill in the missing parts. So you'll see it and understand it when you look under Wednesday for the problem of the day. It's just a picture of one of my whiteboards, but it is something that we are going to be using thoroughly next week in class. So believe it or not, our problem of the week has to do with preparing you for a shortcut method I'm going to teach you next week. So problem of the week, required for everybody, and send me your answer at some point by Friday afternoon, Friday at 5, when everything is due for this week. Okay, that's it for today. Tomorrow's lesson will finish up section 8.3, and it will be a very short and sweet lesson. See you then.